Welcome to a special edition of In the Library of Graphic Literature with our special guest, Rick Parker. Yay! Hey, Rick, how's it going there?
Pretty well. How are you, Wallace?
Not too bad, not too bad. And I noticed actually when I looked at the cover, the quote you have from Durf about where it says a master storyteller, and when that first hit me about how true that was, I can even tell you the exact page because I loved your introduction and your comparison of people to the old comics about how someone like Nancy looked like Nancy, and I was loving all that. And then when it came to the part where you were drawing you're starting to draw the camp, and you switch over to the next page, and it was page 6 where it's that snowy night. It was late February in the sky, a cold gray matched my mood. That page, that was absolutely masterful, and it just kept on going from there. I loved, but there was some. It was very stark. It just hit me right away. I was just like, okay, this guy knows how to tell a story.
Well, I don't know about that, but I certainly have had a lot of practice looking at stories that were told by other people, and I'd like to believe that some of that stuff stuck with me.
Oh, I think
I,
it's definitely rubbed off for sure. But yeah, I loved and I loved the your early days leading up to when you got drafted and all that. Um, how did I mean? I get this sense of almost an impending dread as I'm reading through that, and it's just like I was almost cheering for you. No, no, don't let him get drafted. When I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, that's kind of the name of the graphic novel itself.
yeah, well, I think that my life was a series of incidents of impending dread.
Mm.
And I just figured that, before a person reads a story, I thought it would be nice to let them know a little bit about who I wanted them to think I was.
Okay,
Anyway,
okay, go for it. The well, it does work because, like I say, I think you get that feeling of where we're rooting for you.
yeah, no, I mean, I think when you're doing a story, you have to get the reader to care about the character.
Yes, yeah, very much so, and it was successful because, like I say, I was cheering for you. I was feeling bad for you. It was just like, oh no, no, don't let him get drafted. And then when you got drafted, it was just like, okay, okay, let's hope that he gets, he doesn't get sent over to Vietnam and all this. And but when I seen you talking about the officer training, I felt a bit of relief. It was just like, oh, thank God. Even though I know that the story ends well because we're here talking.
Well, I mean, I thought I would have a better chance of surviving if I went to officer candidate school. I found out later that that was probably not the case, as a lot of the other young lieutenants that I graduated with went on to become forward observers in Vietnam. And there were a few people in the class of '66 officer candidates. A few of those my contemporaries did lose their lives, unfortunately.
Mm.
Um, it was interesting. There was one fellow, I saw a photograph of him on the internet, and it was taken, obviously before he was killed, and he looked like he knew what was going to happen to him,
Mm.
and that was upsetting.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, anyway, I found out later on that one of my best buddies in officer candidate school was killed in 1972, which was a few years after I got out of the service. When I got out of the Army, he came over to my house. I lived in Savannah, Georgia. I'd just gotten out, and he was in flight school for fixed wing aircraft in Savannah. That's where they had the school for pilots for fixed wing planes. And I remember he came over to my house, and he sat down on the couch, and my mother brought out, sandwiches or something. And I remember the way he was sitting the way he was sitting on the edge of the couch, it reminded me a little bit of the way we used to sit on the edge of the chairs in Officer Kennedy School. My hair was starting to get longer, and his was short, and he was in uniform, and he was a great guy, and I've been in touch with a few of the guys that I served with in the Army, and although they went to Vietnam, they came back in one piece. But anyway, the book really isn't about Vietnam, and if that's what people are thinking, I think we should let them know that that's not what the book is about.
Oh no, and that's
it's not about war.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about it, because I'm after reading so many books about Vietnam and all that, but this really opened my eyes in a lot of way. We mentioned it yesterday when we were chatting about the training and all that, and when I read some of it, it was just like, oh my God, that's brutal. It just seemed, it was just like, wow, it seemed traumatizing, to be quite honest. It was like, wow, this they really worked you guys over, right?
Well, it was there were many times during the time that I was in the Army in 1966 through 69 that I remember thinking to myself, this is unbelievable. I'm going to have to tell somebody about this one of these days.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to write a book about it. Although I didn't really think of myself as an author. But there were just some things that were just so moving to me that I just thought, I just don't want these things to be, you don't want these things to be lost. I mean, I'm sure that people go through experiences and they tell other people about it. And I told a lot of people about the things that happened to me over the years. And I think that telling and retelling those incidents probably helped. I'm sure it helped me a lot when it came time to write it down. And anyway, I'm glad that some of these things are going to be preserved in a really nice book, because although the names have been changed, it doesn't really matter what the people's names were.
No.
But I wanted other Americans to know what the training was like, and what kind of ordeals that we went through. And I just thought, I wanted to do something, having had a long career in comics and illustrated stories that were written by other people and never really done anything of any length or significance of my own. I mean, Beavis and Butthead was a great experience, but I didn't write that. But I just thought, I looked at my life and I thought, well, the Army was certainly a very important part of my life, and I thought maybe that would make a good graphic novel. And I finished that. Now I'm moving on to the next story.
Oh yeah, which I'm also looking forward to. But yeah, you're quite right in terms of it, and the title. It really is perfect, because drafted. It's the process. It's everything that you went through and all that. And to me, it was very eye opening, because whenever you see a movie about Vietnam or whatever, there's except for a Full Metal Jacket, there was really nothing about the experience, and even that felt a little bit. I didn't know whether or not it was realistic or whatever. It just. But with this, when I read this, it's just like, oh my God! So this is what it's like when you go to when you're drafted, and it was like I said, I love that part of the story, but the things, the officer training, and like I say, there in the background there was, I think running through it was a tension of what your fate would be, even though we know, because we're reading it, it actually really did come across in terms of, oh my God, I hope Rick's going to be okay. All right?
Well, I just figured I was going to be killed. I figured I was going to go to Vietnam and be killed, because I'd been a skinny little kid in school, and other kids in my neighborhood picked on me, And I just was used to being the one who was held down on the ground and had the dirt and the grass like dribbled into my face as they held me down, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't somebody that got into fights because I could run fast. That was my defense mechanism. I was a really fast runner. And that served me well on a number of occasions, even after I got out of the Army. But when I was a taxi driver in New York, I could think of a number of times in which I ran away from impending doom. But you just do. I was the kind of kid that I was going to do what they told me to do. I grew up in Georgia in the 1950s, and every day we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, and Eisenhower was president when I was a child, and those were good times, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, the 1950s, right after World War II, were really good time. I mean, I was raised by two parents who loved me, and all of their friends, and many of their friends were that was the generation, they call it the greatest generation. Those people went to war, and the ones that came back, I'm sure they felt really good for that to be over with.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I was not the type of person who was going to run away to Canada or claim that I had bone spurs in my heels or something.
Exactly.
Anyway,
you step forward, which and as everyone says, you're to be thanked for your service to your country. My grandfather fought in World War I, and to this day I like to wear a poppy when Remembrance Day comes around, because it's important to do your duty like you did. I myself,
absolutely.
I was too young myself, of course, because I was born in '61. So, everything was more or less finished by that point in terms of great world wars and that.
Yeah. No. Well, your grandfather, he helped save the world.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything to save the world. My only contribution, I think, is I'd like to think that I've made a few people laugh over the course of my lifetime. That was my contribution. I was always trying to be the class clown and stuff like that. That got me into a lot of trouble. But I didn't joke around too much. I didn't joke around too much when I was in the Army, because I was a little bit, I was intimidated by, many of the things that happened. There was this one thing where there was a guy in officer candidate school who was a clown, and he was being yelled at by one of the upperclassmen in the dining hall, and he was looking around, and you weren't supposed to be looking around. You had to keep your eyes straight ahead. And the upperclassman said, "Candidate third on my left, are you dog-eyeing my mess hall?" Sir, Candidate Curley. "No, candidate, you are not. Do you want to buy my mess hall?" he said. And the candidate Curley said, "Sir, do you have change for a quarter?" I thought I was going to shit in my pants, actually, when I heard him. I was looking right at him as he said that. I thought, "Oh my God, they're going to kill him." But I had to do some push-ups, but that was about it. But no, I did what they told me to do.
Yeah.
And played it straight.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get out.
Yeah. I also like.
It's great. It's great to have something like that behind you, and you're only 22 years old. And I'd saved up about $10,000 in cash, because there's not, we didn't get paid a lot, but there wasn't much to do with the money.
Yeah.
So I got out of the Army. I was ready to go back to my hometown and go back to college and transfer to the university and major in art, and then go to New York City, and all the things that happened after that, many of which were really interesting.
Well, I like the interjection of the little bits of your personal life too in amongst it. The women coming on to you, that whole thing. It added in amongst all that marching and strict discipline.
Well, it was a great experience for me because I had never been out on a date,
Mm.
and I graduated from high school. My mother wouldn't let me drive the car, and I'd never kissed a girl. And the next thing I know, I'm getting drafted into the Army, and I felt, wow, that's kind of unfortunate. But also, I was extremely shy,
Mm.
young man. I there was a girl in my class when I was in high school that I just was totally enamored of, but she was going out with the captain of the basketball team, and they went everywhere together. And I think one time she said hello to me or something. I thought I was gonna pass out, but it was nice when I did finally have that experience. And do you remember what happened when after she let me out and I'm walking back toward um, the army base where the soldiers are all out there standing
Yes.
at attention? And I thought for Wallace, I thought they were there for me. It was really weird. I mean, that was another one of those scenes that I thought, this is like a scene from a movie. I mean, the sun is coming up. You've just had this experience of your lifetime, and you can't wait to get back among the soldiers and maybe tell somebody about it. But it was just one crazy thing after another. I know these things happen to everybody's life is filled with these kinds of things. I just think most people, either they are satisfied when they tell somebody,
Mm.
or they just don't ever. They're so busy, living their lives or trying to earn a living or dealing with something that they just don't have a chance to put it all down on paper.
Mm.
But it feels really good to to have finally finished the project. It took me about 5 years to do it.
Wow. Okay.
And I practiced drawing my figures for about a year prior to that. I've got a whole lot of drawings of figures that if I could just get $5 a piece for them, I'd never have to work again. Anyway.
The and the other thing too, well, the very moving one towards the end, and it seemed to really dovetail perfectly towards the end was the funeral scene. I mean that was heart wrenching reading that.
And that was just, I was the officer in charge of military funerals for Oklahoma, northern Texas, and western Arkansas. And that was a job that they gave to young officers who were getting out of the Army. If you were staying in, you were probably kept in some sort of command position, or if you're getting out, they gave those kinds of things like being in charge of raising and lowering the flag, for example. Those were just, somebody had to do it, and they gave it to the officers that were getting out. But I trained, the men to go to the funerals and then supervise the burials of the veterans. And it was 13 military funerals altogether. And every single one of those things was everything, single one of those things was moving. But that one was especially moving. And I thought, when it was happening, I looked down on the highway. The cemetery was kind of up on a little hill in Texas. And I looked down on the highway, and there was a tractor-trailer truck going down the road. And, of course, that person that was driving that thing was oblivious to what was going on just maybe a half a mile away. And I remember it made a noise like, and I thought, wow, it just sent shivers up and down my spine. And I remember thinking, I've got to tell somebody about this. There were so many times when that happened. And so, that story is in the book. And that person, that little girl, is still alive. She's in her 50s now, I guess maybe approaching 60.
Wow.
And we changed the names of the people in the book. And that they make you do that if you're writing a book like this. A publisher's always afraid, I guess, of somebody suing them or maybe getting upset. But it's a beautiful story, and it's I'll never forget it. That's all I can tell you. I'll never forget it. I felt so guilty. Many of the funerals were for young men who'd been killed in Vietnam, and I felt so guilty that I wasn't one of them. But I'm very grateful, to have had the experience that I had, because it really made me look at life, I think, in a different way. Life, first of all, it's very unfair, and nobody's guaranteed tomorrow, and you have to really appreciate every day. It is a gift, really, from I can, love.
Yes.
Let's just put it like that. I'm not a particularly religious person, but I feel very fortunate, to have lasted as long as I have, and to be able to tell some of the experiences, that I've had in my life. And I'm glad you like the book.
Oh yeah, it was.
It means so much to me that people who I admire and respect, and who I know are very knowledgeable, like something, that I've done. When I was working on this project, I had a great feeling about it. And people that I showed it to said, "Oh, Rick, this is the best thing you've ever done." And I knew it. I mean, you can tell when you're doing something.
Yeah.
For so many years, I'd wanted to do something. And, I'd seen Harvey Picar's work in like 1985. I saw American Splendor. And then in I guess it was 2009, I actually got to meet Picar, and along with a few other artists, we illustrated stories that he had written. And I thought it was great, because I wasn't a superhero artist. I would have been good for humor books. I always thought, when I was working at Marvel, there was a copy of Howard the Duck laying around in the office, and I thought maybe something like that will come along, and I'll get to work on it. But, as I spoke to you yesterday, I told you, any young artist or creative person who's looking at this, I want them to know, do not wait to be discovered. Do not wait for somebody to invite you to do something that you want to do. Just give yourself permission to just go ahead and do it. And don't worry about perfection. I think that one of the things that stops a lot of creative people is that they don't get the results that they want right away. But if you're lucky, you will, and you keep working on something, you will get better and better. I did discover that you get better with every single good faith attempt that you make at something, like drawings. Yes. You get better, you learn. Your brain is watching everything that you do, and it's keeping the good parts, and it's discarding the things that don't work. And hopefully, if something doesn't work, you don't keep trying to do that over and over again. And then there are happy accidents that happen, as I'm sure you've discovered in the process of your development as an artist. Sometimes you'll learn something, sometimes it'll happen to you, and then you got it, and then you know that is now, it's like a club in your golf bag that will always be there for you, that you can always use that. And you develop a whole bunch of these clubs in your golf bag, and your clubs are a little bit different from everybody else's clubs. So you don't hit the ball, exactly the same way. But, and I don't even play golf. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But, it's I think doing anything, you just have to accept the fact that it's going to be difficult. And most things are difficult. Somebody asked Bob Dylan one time, "Bob, is it hard to write the songs that you write?" And he said, "No, man, it's really easy." Well, it might have been easy for Bob Dylan, but I don't think it's easy for the rest of us. But what I do think it's easy to do what you want to do. It's harder to do what somebody else wants you to do. At least that's been my experience. But it's easier to do what you want to do. So this book, I didn't have to worry about pleasing anybody except myself. And I'm very happy if other people like it. That's really wonderful. But I was just trying to tell my story to the best of my ability and share it with other people. And I'm glad you like the book, and the reception that I've gotten from the book is beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's a very successful piece for creatively. It was. I mean, I read it in two days, and the only reason I didn't read it in one was it was late at night, and I was getting sleepy, and I was towards the end though, and it was just like, no, no, I want to be awake to really absorb the rest of this. And I got up next morning, I finished it off, and but yeah, it was. And I tell myself, what's that?
I was going to say that means more to me than any. I don't know. You know. I don't know if I could ever make any money on this thing. It's been like I don't know. Must have spent like 20,000 hours or something on it. I don't know. I have to. If I made a dollar an hour, I'd be in great shape. But it really means a lot to me that people are aware that that they want to do something. About, if they're going to spend their hours of their time doing something, they want to. If somebody's going to read my book, I want them to have a positive experience. And there's nothing. There's nothing that means any more to me than somebody that read my book and enjoyed it. Now, it may not be for everybody, but if you liked it, that means a lot to me. Yeah. And I have other friends who have said, Rick, I read your book, couldn't put it down, read it in one sitting. Those are really nice. I know that there are going to be some of the people out there, and you know who you are, who buy the book, and they're going to buy the book and they're going to put it on the shelf and they'll never read it, which I think is kind of, it's like if you're somebody who makes a beautiful pie or piece of or cake for somebody and put and it stays in the freezer until usually later they clean out the freezer and they this large frozen object, they don't even know what it is, and they throw it out. Well, that's kind of a waste. So I hope everybody that buys the book actually reads it.
Yes.
And that would mean a lot to me.
Yeah, and I can't recommend it. Well, I can recommend it enough. It was, and to me, a lot of times it's the personal projects like this where you're putting your heart and your soul in. To me, it was always things like that worked out the best. So,
well, I think you have to be honest.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we all share a lot of the feelings that I have are universal.
Yeah.
Everybody has these feelings, and it's our shared humanity, I guess. There's no point in holding back. If you're gonna let somebody know you, let them know you. Let them know the whole the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, I came across. I came through.
It felt really good to have that project completed.
Yeah. Well, I feel that I knew you a bit better after reading that. So.
Oh yeah.
That to me is shows it, and speaking of truth, we're actually getting close to the end of. Because I know my camera is going to click off soon, but I wanted to get as much as possible. And I actually would like sometime again for us to have a chat, because I love talking with you about comics and all that. I share so many of the same, and I have had some similar insights as to what to stuff we talked about yesterday, for instance. So
yeah, well, I really would love to meet you, and if you have any friends in Canada who are putting on comic book shows, ask them to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
I've only been to Canada once. One of our sons was interested in going to college there. We went to Montreal, and there was this McGill was there, and he